Welcome back. This is video 8 for the Flow Certified Coach training. And this is tile 6, Anticipatory Vision. And we have Jeff Kissinger with us again, one of our Flow Certified trainers. And really great to have you back, Jeff. And
Thank you,
I'm going to
Andrew.
have you introduce yourself on the next slide.
Well, my name is Jeff Kissinger. I'm a Flow certified trainer. I've been involved with Flow since I first met Andrew's brother Ted back in 2013, I think it was.
Yeah.
It was a while ago. And I've learned a lot about how I do what I do through Ted and Andrew. And training Flow it teaches me something every day. So I'm really excited to teach about anticipatory vision.
Awesome.
Now, here are the takeaways that you're going to get here. This is the only tile that is bifurcated, meaning that it does split out. We're going to talk about the Stacy diagram and anticipatory vision diagram. They go together. And we're also going to talk about vision, where vision can be split out. You may have somebody who's talking the talk, but are they really walking the talk? Because we've all experienced that. We have somebody who's got all these great things about vision and they're talking a great talk, but when it
Yeah.
comes down to, okay, we're trying to execute on this vision, but you're blocking us, or you suddenly don't care about what it is we're doing. So we're going to explain that, because where there is no clear vision and the support for that vision, you will have anarchy.
Absolutely.
Now, now check out this diagram. There's a lot going on here, but we're going to explain what this is. Now, the first in this 4 box, you have the individual, the team, the product, and the organization. As you can see, you have the colors of the tiles. The Stacy diagrams on the left talk about where we have known technology and stable requirements, but at the top edges, we have unknown technology and unstable requirements. So the more unstable the requirements, the more unknown, the more chaos and anarchy you're going to experience at the extremes. But if it's known and it's stable, then what you're working on is simple, or it's considered simple, but it's not that simple. And as you'll see down in the second tile in the team, where we're going to spend a good chunk of time explaining, you can see the ratings of the those indicators. Now, the first one at the top left is a T. That's for technology and understanding of the technology. And then the R down below, that's requirements and our understanding of the requirements, to what degree. The C is about communications. This is a third dimension in this, that how difficult is it to communicate, how complex, or to what degree is the ability to communicate what it is we're doing, and to move the project forward. And then the D is, that is a D, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a D.
Okay, I'm having trouble seeing. Um, the D is our ability to deliver, the
Yeah.
capability to deliver, to execute whatever is being done. Now, why are these separated like this? Well, let's go back up to the individual, for instance. Now, I'm going to talk about 2 different projects. The first project is something I worked on a while ago. I think this was 2015 that I worked on this project. It was a PeopleSoft human resources upgrade. It needed to be delivered by December 31st of 2015. It had to be delivered. We would have been in violation of many federal, or not many, there's several federal laws that we would have been in violation of. I was working at a college, and these things had to be put into place. It was a must. Now, why did we wait so long? Well, our leadership kept putting off this project. And to do a project like this, where I was working, there was very specific small segments of time where you can actually turn this over and deliver this project without affecting other operations that were key to the survival of the school. So let's take a look at the individual. At the individual level, the technology was understood to a point, but there were changes with the new package that made it more unknown. the team itself understood the requirements. The requirements are very clear. These new packages had to be put in and it had to be assimilated into the rest of the system and it had to run well. And then the communications are always complex with any type of ERP upgrade, because not only is there the information technology side that has to be put together and done, but you have to communicate it out to everybody who is affected by it. And there's different levels of effect. You have the people that have to work with it, the people that have to test it, the people that individually who are employees of the school and what's going to change for them and how they're going to do it. And there's different training. So that was complex. And then it comes down to the ability to deliver. In our department, there was probably about 8 people that worked on PeopleSoft, probably 10 that were involved with PeopleSoft. And their time that they could spend on projects, really, in a 40-hour week is about 4.5 hours a week, because they spent the other 35.5 hours supporting what was already there. So we had a lot of technical debt that we're taking care of, which left us little time to execute. So either you increase the time you spend a week doing that or not, but you had a lot of senior talent on this team, people that could retire at any time that they wanted to.
Yeah.
So you can't overdo that. So when we get down to the team, after evaluating everybody on the team individually, the cumulative total of those evaluations show up here. So we had the unknown technology. The technology was more unknown because there was a new way of delivering PeopleSoft upgrades, and the requirements were still pretty stable. We knew what we had to do. The communications were complex. We know that we had people we had to deal with within the team. We had people that we had to deal with outside of our team on the within the business side of the organization. And then there's just everybody who's affected by HR, which is everybody who works and is contracted by the school. And then the delivery. The ability or the capability to deliver is affected by the 6 constraints that affect any project right from the get-go. There's the scope, the time, the cost, the quality, resources, and risk and opportunity. And you could definitely throw some other things in there, but that's the main thing that I was looking at. The biggest constraint that we had was time. We're starting in July, trying to get this thing moving. We knew it was going to be at least 6 months, and we had to get it done. So we had to focus on that main constraint. How can we change that constraint? What we did is we went to our partner with PeopleSoft, and we hired a consultant out of there. And this gentleman's name was Larry, and Larry knows his stuff. He really does. He took that unknown technology and brought it into complicated, from complex to right about complicated. In the end, that's where he brought it. But it was a steady dive down, because it didn't show up and do it. He showed us. He had the plan. He made it less scary, but we knew there was a mountain of work we had to do. There was a couple hundred pages of stuff that he brought, but he also had scripts. He also had ways to simplify things, and he worked with certain individuals on the team, which made it easier for us to deliver the project. There was times where this project felt like an airplane flying upside down. There was times where people were scared. There were tears shed sometimes in the meetings because the stress, because there's time that I have to spend all this time supporting what we already have, but I still have to take time to do all this other stuff. And it was stressful. So it had an effect on the resources. So that ability to deliver kind of went from complex to complicated throughout the project. And then communicating it, we had an excellent trainer on the team. I mean, she had been with the organization over 30 years at the time this project was done. And she actually simplified some of the communications more, brought it into, in fact, depending on the type of training you're looking at, she made it very simple. She did these 5-minute little videos to help, make sure people understood things. So as the project wore on, it got better. So we went from being complex at sometimes to being complicated. And then there was the go live, because the technology itself is complicated, to say the least, because there was thousands of steps that had to be completed, but there was a change manager that was automated, that was built in along with Larry's scripts. So the go live took 3 days, or about 2.5 days to complete. It started on a Friday night, ended on a Sunday. and then we go live, make whatever fixes we have to do, and everything's in production. But that was a 6-month project. It ended in December. Everything was okay. And but it took its toll, you know? Why do we have to wait? But there was another project that followed that, because this was one of 6 upgrade projects that I had to do over a period of a few years with this team. The second project was for financials, PeopleSoft financials. And I wanted to try a different approach this time, because if you look at the product itself, if you go over to the product tile, we have a better understanding at this point of the PeopleSoft product and the new way they were delivering upgrades. So the ability to deliver in this case, we were, I would say, probably before we started, I would put it in proactive.
Yeah.
And thank you, Andrew. I put it in proactive, but the technology itself, as far as the clarity of vision, I said, what's it going to take to, as far as what this vision is going to be? Because what we did with the vision for the human resources upgrade, it was very clear. This needs, the vision is it will be done by December 31st, 2015. That was a very clear vision. The mission was get it done. And so we knew we had to do, because we were on fire and we needed to make sure we got it in. But for this one, the vision was a successful implementation of financials. And so there was a clear vision. The technology was, I had to grade that, because there was a gentleman that had been through a financials upgrade. I think it was 2 years previous, and it was hell on earth for him. There was a consultant he worked with. It ended up costing $250,000 to do the upgrade. And it was just this one guy, because the guy who'd done it before had left, and it was just him. And he was stressed, but he got it done. So he had the cuts and bruises and the scars to show that he'd been through it. So I thought, okay, let's try a different approach. I wanted to try Scrum on an ERP project, something you don't often hear about. But what I wanted to do is I wanted an iterative approach, because we had some really good talent. The guy who had just worked on the HR project with this other guy who had the scars, he was new, fresh out of school, but brilliant. And then we had another guy who was the head of the department, who understood financials really well, who could advise us. And we got into a room, and I laid it all out for my first train them with some flow techniques on how to do the candy game. And they thought it was amusing, but they thought, I don't know what you're talking about. This seems kind of stupid, but we'll play along because we like it, Jeff. And we get candy out of it in the end. So we played the candy game and we worked through things. As far as like showing them what Scrum is, I showed them in 20 minutes how that works. And then I brought them into a room right after that, and I got out sticky notes and I said, tell me, what are the main pieces that have to be done, that have to get done in order to make this project work? And they laid them all out. And I said, let's order them in the order of importance, these epics. And then I said, tell me all the other pieces for each of these epics. What are the pieces that are going to be required to get this done? And they laid out the features. And I said, the feature in the epic, what is the most important one that we got to work on very first thing? And they broke out those particular feature, or the one feature that had to be broken out, and they broke that out. And I thought, okay, there's our first sprint. And I went and found this board. It was something was being thrown away. It was a reversible whiteboard on wheels.
Oh, nice.
And it creaked because it was wooden. And I got it out of a building and I brought it over. But before that, I put up 11.5 by 17 pieces of paper and made like a big grid. But I had important, not important, epic, feature, and I called it task. They didn't like the idea of doing user stories. They wanted it called task. So I call it, I don't care what you call it, as long as it's broken down. Yep. And we did the first sprint together. They didn't like the stand-ups. They didn't like any of that stuff. They pissed and moaned their way through it. And but it was okay, because everybody does. And then we started when they completed, we started the next sprint. And in the middle of the second sprint, these were 2-week sprints, they discovered something that they never would have seen if we weren't doing this iteratively. They discovered a big problem that we had to start over all the way. So we were 3 weeks in, we had to start the project over again, but it was 3 weeks in and we got to start the project over again. So what happened at that point is you look at the team side of things, they got a better understanding of the technology. The communications on this one, I would put it in complicated because we're dealing with financials. If we go over, yeah, right there, bring that more up into the right, a little complicated right there. The ability to deliver started out, um, they thought that they could just deliver this. It was simple, but they end up realizing that if we put it more into complex, we took a look at, who is the person who knows the most? It was this guy, Gary, who can deliver this stuff. Do we need to bring in Larry for anything? So we budgeted 80,000 for Larry's time just to bring that as a safety net. The requirements were very clear, but the technology was right about where you see it. But if you look over on the product itself, this is what happened. We had planned 6 months. The blast project cost $250,000. We were budgeting $80,000 for this one. And we had 6 months to complete it. And this is what happened. The the requirements were stable. The technology went from being not reactive, but I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong place. The technology came, it was still complicated. The requirements were simple, but in the product side, the technology, we went to pre-active because we had a better understanding of how that worked. The requirements, I would put that requirements in anticipatory because we knew what to expect. Communications were not reactive, they were proactive, and the ability to deliver, and this is the cool part, the ability to deliver as each sprint went on, it kept going more and more and more toward anticipatory, right up to the edge, right there. We knew what to expect because then we got to go live and we went live. Project was supposed to be 6 months. We did it in 3.5 months. The budget was 80,000. We did it with 5,000. And the only reason it was 5,000 because we said, just as insurance, since we have the money, let's put Larry on retainer over the go live weekend. And
Yeah.
what we did to make this work, and which is pretty common with any type of upgrade, you do practice upgrades along the way. We did an upgrade 1, an upgrade 2, an upgrade 3, and a 4. With the HR project that we did, we got through 3 of the upgrades, but with the financials project, we end up doing 4, I think even a 5th, because he got so good. The guy who was delivering it, he got so, so good at doing it. He wanted to get his timing down. And
Yeah.
then we delivered that project. We delivered it in 3.5 months instead of 6. And we set ourselves up for doing the next of the other upgrades. We ended up doing 6 total because there was tools upgrades and we had to upgrade financials and human resources and the campus solutions stuff along the way, which the campus solutions we knew was coming as far as anticipatory for the organization. We knew it was coming. We knew what we had to do. But with each one of these upgrades, the team got better. We got better at processing and doing the type of work. They chose Scrum over Waterfall for the other 5 projects of the 6 in the set. And it took some people getting used to doing the stand-ups. I did this with nothing but sticky notes and that crappy little whiteboard. And on
Yeah.
one side of the whiteboard had the product information, and the other side had the sprint information. And I just
Beautiful.
flip it around, I roll it into a room, creak it in there, creak it back out. And that's how we did it. And there were some people who were like, I don't like the stand-up meetings, da 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 da. But what I got an understanding of is what I got to anticipate is I know if people aren't showing up for those stand-up meetings, then they're not either getting their stuff done or they're scared to tell about what they've already done. So I would go talk to them. But
Yeah.
it helped my ability to anticipate what was coming and to show them what was coming. And as we got to see it unfold before us, people got more and more confident, which affects the ability to, it took away the reactive part completely. At the very least, some people were proactive. The organization itself became more, I would say, pre-active, if not anticipatory, knowing what to expect because the trends were there. We knew what to expect. We had taken something that was unknown and made it more known.
Yeah, that's a beautiful example of being able to manage two future facts, and is what makes it anticipatory.
Mhm.
That's really cool.
Yes.
Awesome. This was a great example of the two. And for those that aren't so familiar with these two charts, I was just going to mention From our view, from a flow view, our goal is to take the chaos and complexity and try to move it from that upper right corner here and move it down into complicated or even simple. So as you're
Mhm.
moving from upper right to lower left, things are getting better. It's
Yeah.
the opposite in the way the anticipatory vision uh, Stacy diagram is set up, where it's reactive, then proactive, preactive, and anticipatory. The first three come from Dr. Burris's book, Flash Foresight. And that's what Jeff was just talking about, is measuring those trends in the trend lines. And then the anticipatory is being able to do those future facts. So
And
really,
I like to also point out when things like with if you look up on the Stacy diagram on the left where it says chaos and anarchy, you never
yeah,
want to get there, of course. But if you have anarchy, it means there's not a clear vision.
yeah,
At the beginning of every meeting, every stand-up meeting, or I'm sorry, every sprint planning meeting
yeah,
and sprint review meeting, I would bring up, I had the vision written right at the very top of the board.
yeah,
Okay. And the vision for like the financials project was to deliver um, a flawless implementation.
beautiful.
And they had that and they saw that. And I said, okay, how does what we're going to do get us there? How does what
Beautiful.
we're going to do going to get us here?
Yeah,
And what was really cool is when the vision was clear and we all agreed to that vision. And then before we even started product planning, the first one, we agreed on a vision
yeah,
and we had to keep cultivating that vision. You just don't agree and then, okay, great, vision's cool. You know, you have to keep vision. This is where we're going. But chaos too, and with that, the D and that, the ability to deliver. If you can't deliver, you will have chaos.
yeah,
So being able to keep an eye on that ability to deliver at an individual
yeah,
level, at a team level, at a product level,
yeah,
helps. It's a gauge, and it's something that I think as a flow certified professional, you can use that in your projects um, to get an idea where things are going. Because I told you there was a point where that HR project felt like a jet flying upside down because it was on
yeah,
fire because there was people that were freaking out. They didn't have time. It was getting emotional. I said there was tears shed at times. There was some people that would yell, and all that stuff because it was getting chaotic because people were being stretched
yeah,
further than they wanted to be stretched. They felt anxiety. They didn't like that it was being pushed. This deadline was such a hard deadline, and hard deadlines will do that to people,
yeah,
you know, because so it's something to keep an eye on. It's if you had to have your own dashboard of things to keep an eye on a project or a team or something like that, this has to be a gauge that's in there. That's
yeah,
essential.
yeah. This is really good. And that's a beautiful segue into the next slide.
But we're talking about vision. There is the you probably heard this before in several different settings, but there's the defined vision and delivered vision. It's the difference between talking the talk and walking the talk. And in order to do that, you have to have a distilled vision. It has to be clear. So when you click on the next piece of this, if you have not a distilled vision, you're going to have politics. So how do we resolve politics? If you look at the flow of friction analysis, you have to go back and first look at right before that, there has to be a redefinition of what the vision is.
Yeah,
And if you if it can't be defined well, then you have to make sure you have the right people involved
yeah,
and making sure that vision is correct. And of course, you have to define what that vision is. So you have I'll give you an example. Let's say you have somebody who's a visionary type of person. They could come up with a real clear vision and people get on board. Yay, this is what we're going to do. And they choose the right people to get into this. And then they don't really quite define how that's going to be because the person has moved on. The visionary has, they got other things on their mind and they don't support the vision, and that will create confusion because we can't, well, what is it we're trying to do, and then the politics come in. If you have people that are like, okay, I said this is what we're going to do, but we don't have time for that right now. There's other things that are more important. Then the politics will come on because this thing that once was important is no longer important,
yeah,
but it's still got people who are invested in it. And I've seen this happen where projects are halfway through. You got people already engaged, they've already put in the work, they've already got lots of skin in the game, and they're being pulled out of something because it's so long, it's not considered important, but it really is important. Someone's just focusing on other things. So the ability to um, talk the talk is one thing, but to
Hmm.
walk it, to show that this is not just what I said, this is actual as opposed to imply, or if it's like the implied vision too, can, if it's not stated clearly, but it's implied by the actions about what,
Yeah.
how somebody is actually carrying out the vision. And the projects I was talking about before, we made a very, people were looking at me like, why do we have to do this vision statement? Because they really did. I think people get
Yeah.
tired of it because, and the problem is there, the problem with vision statements really is there are too many people who have talked the talk and they never walk the walk.
Yeah.
They come up, there's people, it's typically, it's a, I think it's one of those things that where the people that do the work and the people that talk about the work that needs to be done, where that big separation is. You have the people that sit on high and those that resent them from below the in the organization. It's like, yeah, we're going to do this funny, fluffy vision thing that you got, but I got to sit here and deliver this because you're going to not pay attention to it. Your job was coming up with a vision. My job is to spend my life trying to carry it out.
Yeah.
There has to be something there that inspires people to connect to the vision. It first has
Yeah.
to be something that I just didn't say this vision, but I included you in this vision and defining what this vision is. We're all in this together. And there's the actual what somebody said, and then there's the true vision, and then there's what they're actually doing and how well do they connect. The more fracture there is, the more fracture there is in the organization, and the more politics you're going to have, and the less trust you're going to have in your leadership, and the less trust the leadership has in the people doing the work. And
Yeah.
that's
It
where the
becomes a
fracture
vicious
occurs.
circle. Yeah.
Yes. And
Yeah.
it can destroy, if nothing else, you're going to lose people in the organization, either
Yeah.
through resignations or through firings.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect.
So to recap this, again, this is the only tile that is bifurcated. The Stacy diagram is a very, I like this particular one. And where we talked about how to gauge where the work is and what the complications are with the how complex the technology, the requirements, the communications on it, and the ability to deliver it.
Hmm.
Very important. And again, this is a gauge you can use again and again. I suggest you do. It's something that can change daily.
Yeah.
Um, you can have everything going really well, then somebody key to the organization got a better job, and all of a sudden everything's going to shift.
Yeah.
And we also talked about vision, the difference between talking the talk and actually walking the talk. And where if you have people that are talking the talk and not actually walking it, how phoniness has a way of infecting an organization
Yeah.
with, I think, basically the equivalent of a virus. It will cripple an organization.
Yep.
And the Stacy diagram, we talk about being three-dimensional, but in this case, with the with that D, it's actually four-dimensional.
Yeah.
And how close can you get your organization to being anticipatory? When
Yeah.
you're anticipatory, you can see things coming with the hard trends. You basically read the future by
Yeah.
doing this. In Daniel Burris's book, Flash Foresight, I highly suggest you read it.
Yeah.
It takes you from being reactive, proactive to preactive, but we talked about with flow, anticipatory vision, the ability to see and anticipate what's coming, because there are trends, hard trends. There's soft trends too, but the hard trends are the ones you need to read. And in the examples I gave, we knew the hard trends and we took advantage of them in order to reduce delivery time, costs, and the number of scars left on the people doing the project.
Yeah. Well, and what was beautiful about that second example that you gave for the second time you guys did the project, not only had you reduced the budget by 2/3, you actually used like only a little bit over 5% of the budget.
Yes.
So I'm
And
looking
if
at that and I'm just like going, that's amazing.
and what I can also say about the other four projects followed, because we knew the most complicated one we were going to do was called Campus Solutions, which affects everybody, every student, every employee,
Yeah.
everybody. Okay, and we made that one last because when we started strategizing on how to roll these, because we knew we had to do these upgrades in order to get right. Uh, we knew we had to do that one last, but we also knew that if we did these, one we had to do first, which is the HR, and then do the financials and the tools upgrades, and probably in another financial and HR upgrade before we did the next campus solution one. We knew that if we did them in that order, um, that we would be able to take on what was coming. We would be able to anticipate what was next. We got good at doing projects the way we're doing it with the Scrum, because the only project we did that was waterfall in this was the first one. Everything else became Scrum projects. People got used to it. Again, not everybody was like, yay, stand up meetings, but they did them. And as we brought people in outside of IT, we brought them in for our stand up meetings, representatives of the different testing groups that had to do stuff. Again, they were like, I don't want to do this. But when they did it and they saw the results of it, then the aha curve went up a little bit for them. And they realized, I get it. And
Yeah.
we did the same thing with like I said, we did all this stuff together. It became iterative, and they were all successful projects. And the very last one I did was the campus solution one.
Yeah.
And people, I mean, we knew that would work. The leadership knew that this was going to happen, and they knew, there was always people that the nervous Nellies and stuff like that, but they were less nervous
Yeah.
Nellies than they usually were. So,
Well, the success breeds success,
yes,
and the trust just and the credibility just continue to go up over time.
absolutely.
And it was a beautiful example of prioritizing within the program which ones should go first. So from a program portfolio view, again, it was an excellent example of how to do it, both from a tradition, starting out from a traditional way and then moving over into a more agile way of doing that. That's just absolutely marvelous to see how you guys did that. It's really great example.
And what made it even better is, I mean, it held together these people that were been there a long time. I mean, they were already tight, but you have people on the edge of retirement. You
Yeah.
don't want to lose them, because we also knew
No.
that we could anticipate if we lost these people, we would be hurting, and we'd have to go pay for that talent, which the money to go do that, we'd have to go, sit there with a cup in our hand in budget meetings trying to get this done, and everyone being so disappointed about why we got to spend this money on these things. So
Yeah.
it took all those things in consideration that you see on the one Stacy diagram in terms of the ability to deliver, because all those factors, the constraints of any project and where people are at, individual things that are going on, time, all,
Yeah.
it was just had to be considered when looking at this. But again, this is a great gauge, I think, for measuring your team and how, what your team can take and what they can't take.
Yeah.
And because you don't want to push them over the edge, but you don't
No.
want to let them sit idle either.
No, exactly. A really, really great example. Thanks, Jeff. Looking
Welcome.
forward to having you in the next video, and thank you for sharing this with us today. This was awesome.
You're welcome. Thank you, Andrew.